All right, and our next guest we have here with us today, it's the host of the Mind Shift podcast, and is a doctor of theology. He's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Clint Heacock, Haycock, how you doing?
Yeah, really good. Nice to meet everyone again. It's been a while since we've done this podcast. It was about 6 months ago, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it's been a minute, huh?
Yeah. It's good to be back in.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we love having people come back. There's always more to talk about. Let's put it that way.
It's always more. New stuff's always happening all the time, so there's something to talk about for sure.
Absolutely. So, and you were here to talk with us about Christian Dominionism. But before we get into that, can you give us a quick bio as to who Clint Haycock is?
Oh man, so I was raised in evangelical Christianity in the Seattle area in the States. I was a pastor, I was an elder of a church. I did all that for all my adult life. Basically, I was either in ministry or in academics, going to Bible college, seminary, and all that. I came over here to the UK about 16 years ago to do a PhD in theology, and then I taught for another about 6 or 8 years at a Bible college here in Leeds and Liverpool. So I was all in, man.
I was just about to say, I'm like, wow, you're all into
I
this.
was
Like,
all in, man. Yeah, I was a pastor. I was a Bible college teacher. I did everything.
Did you do
wow.
the faith healing?
No, I wasn't in the charismatic tradition, but I've gone to Foursquare churches. I've seen all that kind of stuff in person. Yeah, but we weren't. That wasn't our tradition. It was more like just your straight evangelical theology.
Oh, okay. So was it like non-denominational evangelicalism,
Yeah,
or is it okay? Yeah, that's
I
where I
mean,
came from
our
too.
church. Yeah, the church I joined up to in Portland when I was in Bible college. That I then became an elder and later the pastor of. It was actually affiliated with the Willow Creek out of Chicago, Bill Hybels' church. So we did the whole seeker service type thing. So that was our angle going into it. I was there about 15 years. I was there as an elder and a pastor for about the last 12. So a long time, man.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
So, so what was it that kind of started you off down the deconstructing, you know, uh, how you believe in that
Yeah.
religion?
Well, I think basically it's a case of my friend David Hayward. He's the naked pastor. I don't know if you've had him on, but he talks about deconstructions like the tracks of a train track. One is your relationship with the church. The other one is your relationship with theology and the Bible and God and all that. And no matter which path you go down, one of them will inevitably affect the other one. And that's what happened to me. I got burned out as a pastor of the church. And then I was also, that led me to sort of deconstruct my religious theology beliefs and all that, and eventually, like I said, both of them impacted on the other ones. So it was a case of, I didn't want to have anything to do with Christians ever again after I got scorched when I was a pastor of a church in
Oh,
Portland. That then led me to start questioning, well, why did this happen? Why are Christians treating, each other so horribly, which led me down a lot of rabbit trails,
right.
questioning
Yeah.
everything.
Wow. So, I mean, and that takes some serious honesty on your part because, for
Yeah.
most people, when we put that much into it, we suffer from the sunk cost fallacy where you'll just keep rationalizing
Mm-hmm.
forever because of everything you've put into it. So that's
Yeah,
incredible.
I did. And I would say I definitely did because, you have so much invested time, money, energy, effort, years of your life spent, going to Bible college and seminary and all the rest of it. And I mean, I can look back. There's several times in my Christian life where I did struggle with cognitive dissonance. I would see that now, and yet somebody would talk me down. Someone would talk me off the cliff. So I had a way to get back into the game, as it were. But then eventually you can't do it anymore. There's that
Yeah.
analogy of like you put all these doubts and questions on this mental shelf in your mind, and eventually the shelf can't handle the weight anymore and it just collapses. And that's basically what happened to me. I just couldn't do it anymore. It was too much.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what it like you said, like it just once it piles up enough, because like I feel like I would always and tell me if this is the same for you, I would get physically uncomfortable when I was
Yeah.
faced with something that didn't fall in line with my preconceived notions. Like that cognitive dissonance has a physical, like it had a physical
Yeah. Yeah.
like I would get sick. Did you ever have like feeling that? when you were coming out?
Well, I see it now. I was talking to someone the other day for one of my podcasts. She's a clinical social worker, psychotherapist out of Sydney, Australia. And she was saying that what happens is when you're in a religion or a cult, when you have doubts and questions and concerns, what's actually happening in that process is that's your authentic self that's actually kind of rearing its head and saying, I don't believe that. I don't agree with that. And she said what it does, she calls it a site of injury. You're actually doing traumatic damage to yourself, to your authentic self. And every time you push that down and suppress that, you're actually doing trauma to yourself. And that's what you have. Part of the recovery process of coming out of religion is going back and going, okay, that was my authentic self trying to get out past the religious self. And so you've got to deal with all that. It's not healthy to suppress that. It really isn't.
No, yeah.
So I think that's one of those things we don't talk about a lot in the atheist communities, actually the mental health aspect and what we do to ourselves and what we did to ourselves.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a process. It's the whole thing about, like, in evangelical Christianity. I'm sure you're familiar with this analogy. We had to wear a mask all the time. We had to basically pretend to be something other than what we really were to fit into the group and all that. And that's doing trauma to ourselves. It really is. And it affects our mental health. You can't be true to yourself. You're not actually being the person. You're actually who you are. You're trying to fit in with the group and, play the game and everything else.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's it can do a
exhausting.
lot. And you got to go back and kind of repair that damage, afterwards.
Exactly. You have to find out who your authentic self really is. And that's the process of, I consider the reconstruction bit after leaving religion. You have to go back and say, okay, who am I? What kind of a person do I really want to be? Especially if you're like me, I was raised in religion from day one. So that was my religious self, was myself. So I thought, so now I'm on this journey of sort of rebuilding and reconstructing the person that I want to be. That's not I've taken all the religious pieces out of it, to rebuild my whole ethical framework, my whole moral code, if you will, without saying, oh, it's based on the Bible or it's based on God's, revealed word or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I think with a lot of mental health stuff, it sometimes will always get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
So you're talking about dealing with those injuries because you poke it and it hurts, but you have to deal with that hurt before you can get there.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of us have problems with being triggered. I hear a lot of ex-evangelicals, for example, say, I'll hear a worship song from 20 years ago and I'll suddenly, bam, it'll trigger somebody will offer to pray for me and I'll just really get upset. And I think it goes back to those sites of injury, because you think about in the context of an evangelical church, for example, it's all about being immersed in this experience, the music and the worship and the lighting and the whole package. It takes us on this emotional journey. We actually think that we're experiencing God and the Holy Spirit in that context, but actually it's all about what Dr. Robert J. Lifton calls mystical manipulation. It's all about milieu control. We're being taken on a ride. It seems spontaneous and free flowing, but it's actually carefully planned and contrived. So we think we're experiencing God, but it's actually. And then we realized later, I was being manipulated. I was being taken on a journey that can trigger you and lead to some pretty dark places if you don't deal with it.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and you can, even if you just listen to the, say you just take out all the worship words, right, of the music, you listen to it and it's purposefully emotional music. That's why they use kind of the same 4 chords over and over again, because it's these types of chord progressions that elicit, emotion, and just and it's meant to, find the people in the crowd that are going through something, and get them to stand up when they're like, hey, you're going to dedicate your entire life to Jesus and always be here and do everything we're going to tell you, right? And they're all like, yep, I'm going to do it because I'm feeling,
I'm feeling the spirit.
Give me the emotions I wanted.
Yeah,
right.
Because I played in worship teams for years. I was a drummer. That's how I got started at this church in Portland. I was just looking for a gig, basically. I was looking for a place to play drums, and I got hooked up with this church. And I mean, I can remember many, many a time. You just, as a musician, you're sensitive to what the crowd is doing. You can get flow with it. They give you energy off the crowd, and you feed it back to them, and it's kind of this symbiotic relationship. We'd be playing a worship song, and you could just feel the mood. And you just kind of, the worship leader would turn around to the band and say, let's go around one more time. Just keep going around, you just keep playing and playing. Yeah, you just feel that. Yeah, it's like, come on, one more time. And as the drummer, you're just like, okay, you're in the pocket, and you just keep playing, and you can just feel the emotion, and the crowd is being taken on this. And you think, oh, that's the Holy Spirit. That's the Spirit moving. We're being sensitive to the Spirit, but it was just we're just being sensitive to the emotions of what was going on in the audience.
Yeah, these motions that like you said, it's on purpose to dig these emotions out. That was the thing that got me, because I used to think like I had felt the Holy Spirit and everything, but then I actually went and saw NoFX, and and when I saw them, I got the exact same feeling from an atheist Jewish band.
So it's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's weird that I'm feeling the Holy Spirit here.
It should be right.
But now you play drums for Satan because he plays much better music, right?
Oh yeah, man. I play in a heavy rock band. But it's funny thing, as you said, Brentley, it's the same exact dynamic, because we could be playing a gig and you feel the exact same crowd. We might be playing an AC/DC song or some other tune that's a totally secular heavy rock song, and if the crowd's into it, you just go around again and around. You just keep jamming. Yeah. And you feed off that energy off the crowd. And I'm thinking, there's no Holy Spirit in this thing. It's just pure rock and roll, man. This is what music is supposed to be like.
It's the power of music.
Yeah, God is not that cool.
Yeah, especially when you're playing Highway to Hell. It's like he would never get behind that. Oh man.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we brought you on here because we wanted to talk a bit about Christian Dominionism, and that I'm sure this has something to do with Christians and the voting machines, right?
Oh man, yeah. No, you're talking about Dominion, the Dominion voting machine. That's funny though, because I saw somebody last year, after the election, they were all pissed off that they said, how could they use our word? That's our word, Dominion voting machines. That's our word. We're Dominion, So they were upset actually. Yeah, they're like, how can they use our word?
I have a card game that I would love to introduce them to.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's called just Dominion, and it's actually the best card games.
The word just means a thing. It's not their word.
Yeah, they didn't invent it.
No.
Yeah, they were pissed off at Dominion voting. Of course, they're turning around and suing Mike Lindell and Sidney Powell for $1.6 billion or something. I don't know what's going to come of that, but
nothing.
They've alleged that it was all hacked and stolen from Trump and everything else.
Right? Yeah, nonsense.
What happens when you say things with zero proof?
Yeah, well, they're into conspiracy theories. That's it's all, a lot of it's based around QAnon. We saw that with the January 6th insurrection, which is ironically coming up on a year now, just about almost a couple of weeks away from it was a year ago that they stormed the Capitol. And what was fascinating about that was you saw all the signs. There was a lot of Christian symbolism and sign, plus right along with QAnon. So it's all part and parcel of this whole, what evangelicalism in America is becoming now with the Christian right and Trumpism, QAnon. It's all this big, massive conspiracy theory mess, around COVID and everything else.
Yeah, they were praying, like, once they got into the Capitol while they're doing crimes, they're like, thanks God for blessing our crimes.
That's a weird thing, yeah.
Although they wouldn't have seen it as crimes. With what they were saying, I guess they saw themselves as patriots. They were standing up for the rights of the fact that that the election was stolen from Trump. They believed the big lie, and they were going out to the Capitol to make the point that we want to overturn this election and make sure Trump actually stays in power. But of course, there was a lot of Christian, I say prophets at the time. I did a bunch of episodes on this that were all predicting. Well, first of all, they predicted before the election that Trump was going to win. And then when he didn't, it was really, really fascinating as a case study, because it was a case of clear prophecies that did not come true, which was part of why they were so desperate to embrace the big lie, because they could say, well, see, we weren't wrong. Trump did win, but it was stolen, so that's one way they could get out of it.
Hence the dangers of that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
What's
any
that?
prophecy, that's the danger of any prophecy.
Yeah. But if it doesn't come true, and they all claimed that God himself had told them that Trump was going to win, and then they had no choice but to somehow come up with a way to justify and say, well, it wasn't a false prophecy. clearly it couldn't have been a false prophecy. So therefore, Trump did win, and it was stolen. And that's I think a lot of it, because I saw a thing the other day. There's a guy named Johnny Enlow, and he's a big Seven Mountains Mandate Dominion theologian, and he was saying just the other day on Right Wing Watch that they put a clip up where he was saying not only did Trump win the U.S. presidential election, he's actually the president of the world.
Of the world, yeah,
I saw that. Yeah.
What the fuck is he talking about?
Oh, we got to find that video.
Yeah, I have
Get
a
on
lot
Right
of
Wing
questions.
Watch. It's on there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we're going to Right Wing Watch's YouTube channel. You'll see a clip of Johnny Enlow talking about how God has revealed to him that Trump is actually not just the president of the United States; he's the president of the world, and it's all going to be revealed soon. It's all happening soon. So just hold on to your hats. It's going to happen real soon.
Yeah.
Does this mean that Trump is then going to enter in like a one currency for the world? Because if we're going to start going there, I need to see the clashing of the. Wait a minute. Does that mean then he's the Antichrist?
Yeah,
He checks all the boxes. All the boxes
yeah.
of everything.
All they need to do is they need to start selling bracelets, like those silicone bracelets, and then we've got it.
Yep,
it's crazy.
The hand and forehead, you know.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I grew up as a kid hearing all that stuff, watching the movies, you know, A Thief in the Night and all that. I had rapture anxiety, so all that stuff was all part and parcel of my evangelical upbringing. You know, the fear of the rapture, the Antichrist, and one world government, and all the rest of it. So Trump's the president of the world now, apparently.
Right.
Yeah, all the Mormons are going to go to Missouri, from what I hear.
Actually, I think I heard something about them going to Iowa now to try and find the ancient. They're doing some digging in Iowa for that, which also has me worried because if they do find, let's say they find something from a tribe that we haven't heard of before, or even stuff that we have heard of, it's like, oh great, now they're going to do some appropriations.
Yeah, they're just going to claim it.
Yeah, no, they believe that Missouri was the location for the Garden of Eden.
Yes, of course
they're all gonna go there. So like all the Mormons, you know, just wait for that time and just have them sign over their house to you, because that'll be great.
They'll do it.
You're not going to need your house. Just sign it over to me. I'll live here for as long as the world stays.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I think there's some Mormons in Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm sure there are. They're everywhere. They're worldwide. They're over here in the UK. They're everywhere, aren't they? In fact, I got approached a couple of years ago up in Leeds, up in England, by these two American missionary young girls. They were probably, I don't know, 18, 19. And turns out they were Mormon missionaries. I mean, how random is that? They just, you know, tapped me on the street and started preaching the Mormon
the Mormon gospel there
in Leeds, of all places, you know, so it can happen. It's a thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I think most of the time when in Minnesota, when we find missionaries, it's usually like, okay, honey, you need to get some gloves and some boots because it is winter and they're from Utah and they do not understand the snow. Like
brutal.
I was going to say,
Utah has snow.
Utah,
not like Minnesota,
not like Minnesota, honey.
Not like Minnesota. Yeah,
not like Minnesota.
Like but I get what you're saying. But hey, so tell us a little bit about Christian dominionism, because I'm not very familiar with that term.
Yeah.
So,
well, I just did a thing, I don't know, a month or two ago on the Seth Andrews Thinking Atheist podcast. We talked about that, so people can go listen to that episode as well if they want a little bit more information. But basically, it's taken from the verse in Genesis 1, chapter 26, or chapter 1, verse 26. Where God's in the narrative of Genesis, God tells Adam and Eve when he's created the Garden of Eden that they need to be fruitful and multiply and take dominion over the earth, have stewardship and take dominion. And so most Christians will read that verse and they'll take it like an environmental sense. We need to be stewards of the earth environmentally, and that's what dominion means. It's like a creation mandate, but probably about maybe 30, 40 years ago, there was a kind of a new strain of thinking that came out where they started saying, no, it's more of a political dominion. It's all about taking charge of the world politically. And we have to do that. And therefore, when Christians take over the world politically, then Christ can return. So they saw that as that's the mandate to take dominion in a political sense, not in an environmental sense.
Wow, that seems like completely the opposite of like what Revelation says and everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be that the world got so bad that the Antichrist, unites this evil world and all that. And then the Christians are basically hardly any, and then they get raptured out, right? And then, then Jesus.
Yeah.
But that's so funny how they can just twist stuff around.
Well,
serve their...
it's a different. What were we going to say?
I was going to say, it also kind of runs afoul of the persecution complex a lot of them have built up.
Right? Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, I mean, that's also the same. That's also the same like Bible verse that those quiverful people use, right? The ones that like have as many children as possible.
Yeah, that's all part and parcel of like the homeschooling, Christian homeschooling movement. Basically, you go back to the history of it. There was a guy named R.J. Rushdoony. He was the founder of what's called Christian Reconstructionism, probably in about the late 1950s and early 1960s out of California. And he was the first one that really articulated this sort of dominion theology from Genesis and other places. And the difference is, as you were saying, Brentley, that's like a premillennialist view where there's going to be a rapture and Christians are going to be taken out and then the tribulation will come and then Christ will return. Well, Rushdoony, he was a post-millennialist. And that's really important to make that distinction because he believed that it was the job of the church to set up the kingdom of Christ before he returned. So there'd be 1,000-year rule of the church, then Christ returns. So that's a big difference. There wouldn't be all this rapture theology, So that was a lot of the sort of motivation behind what he was doing. He was a post-millennialist, which may not seem like a big distinction, but it did make a big difference in terms of his theology.
So the thing I don't get here, right? So like, if you believe this, right, we got to build this world up, make it great for Christ. Like, shouldn't these people then in turn be the biggest environmentalist out there? Shouldn't they want like a clean planet for Jesus to show back up to?
Well, I don't think they care too much about that because they know he's going to return. He's going to burn. Everything's going to burn, So it's like, well, he's going to create a new heavens and a new earth. So it really doesn't matter. It's kind of a twisting of that whole concept, I think.
Yeah, that's what I used to say. I was like, well, God's going to destroy this earth anyway. It was built for us. So we just get to fuck it up all we want.
Yeah,
and
it's all going to be made new at some point.
Make all my dishes styrofoam. Who cares?
Exactly.
It's true. Yeah. Use plastic for everything. Dump all your shit in the ocean. Who cares? It's all going to burn. It's all going to go away.
So do you see this as just sort of like a crazy ass pipe dream that these people have, these dominionists? Or are they actually making some headway here?
Oh, they're making major headway because the kind of short version was, okay, Rushdoony, his whole theology was that what needs to happen is society needs to be based on Old Testament law. That needs to be the law of society. And that's the best way to run a godly society, in air quotes. Now, some of his views were so extreme because he called for the stoning of gays. So basically, like all the Old Testament laws would be enforced today. So if you were gay, if you were caught having sex outside of marriage, if you were caught, if you on your wedding day, if you were proven that you weren't a virgin, you could be dragged out and stoned. All these laws in the Old Testament. Now, a lot of people were like, okay, that's too extreme. However, his ideas did infiltrate into the Christian right back in about, I'd say, early or late 1970s and early 1980s, really when the Christian right started getting organized with guys like Jerry Falwell, the Moral Majority, Council on National Policy. Those were the big sort of groups that were founded around the late 70s and early 80s. They didn't agree with everything Rushdoony said, but they took that piece of we need to be involved in the political sector to Christianize America. Because, of course, they believe in Christian nationalism. They think America was a Christian nation. And so in order for God to start blessing America again, we have to return. That's why we see things like, for example, the Texas abortion law and the Mississippi or Missouri abortion law. What they're trying to do is actually outlaw abortions with the view that God will start blessing America if we will stop abortions. So that they're still making headway, even right now. It's in the Supreme Court right now.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and that's the worldview behind why they're pushing these, draconian anti-abortion laws. It's all down to a dominionist Christian nationalist viewpoint.
Yeah, because they seem to think that we were like a solidly Christian nation at one point.
Yeah.
And we got away from that, and now God's blessing has left us.
Yeah.
And so that's why we got to guess. But they've been saying that since the fucking beginning.
They have been.
It's always that narrative, you know.
But the difference is probably, I'd say, since the late 70s, early 1980s, that's when they started getting organized. They said, for example, even Trump appointing these 3 Supreme Court justices, that was all part of the long game. They've been talking about that and working toward that for probably 30 to 40 years, where it's like, we need to elect a president who's either a Christian or at least sympathetic to Christianity, evangelical Christianity, with a view to appointing multiple judges. The best one would be on the Supreme Court. That is exactly why the timing of these abortion laws has come along now, because Trump was able to appoint those 3 judges. This is all part of their strategy. This is what the Christian right's been working toward for decades. This is no accident. This is a very, very long game, and they're very deadly serious about it.
Yeah, it's a lot like that documentary. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on Netflix called The Family.
Yeah. That's what got me started, because I heard Jeff Charlotte talking about Dominion theology when I saw that series on The Family, and I've never heard of it. So I started researching it, and it led me down all these rabbit trails and finding out the names and the major players, behind all this. In fact, I've got to go at about 8 o'clock my time tonight. I'm talking to Jonathan Larson, who's from the Young Turks Network, and he's been doing a series of investigative reports on the TYT network on the family, the prayer breakfast, which is a big thing that they do every February in Washington, D.C. And he's exposing a lot of the stuff that goes on with the family right now. So I'm really interested to talk to him.
Wow, that's awesome. That's one of my favorite shows. I watch TYT quite a bit. That's great.
Yeah, wow, so he's exposing a lot of that. Basically, what happened is somebody hacked into their database and provided TYT network with the guest list of people that the family has been inviting to the prayer breakfast for several years now, and that has led them to expose so many things that they want to keep hidden. So it's a really good series. If people haven't read those articles on the TYT network, I would encourage you to go look that up, because it's a big thing. They've exposed so many things that they're doing.
Jeez. And so does this have, because I have heard of like the Project Blitz. Is that a part of this as well?
Yeah, it is. Because again, you look at the names, who's behind it. There's a guy named David Barton, and he runs this organization called Wall Builders out of Aledo, Texas. And he's probably the biggest Christian nationalist, quote, historian in America. He goes all over, speaks at churches, he gives tours in the Capitol, and he's promoting this myth of Christian nationalism. And so what Project Blitz is it's like they're like flooding all these state and federal legal processes with model bills to try to, just flood. It's like whack-a-mole. They have to knock them out. There's things like changing the license plate to say, "In God We Trust," and adding Bible literacy programs in schools, and putting "In God We Trust" on police cars and fire engines and all that kind of stuff, putting the 10 Commandments in courthouses. And they know that a lot of them are going to fail. But the point is, they're just going to flood all the state legislators with these bills. And eventually enough of them are going to they're going to go through. And they're trying to Christianize America. And that's what Project Blitz is about. Just literally blitzing the nation with all these bills, and in the hopes that some of them will get passed.
Yeah. Right. I live in Texas that already says "In God We Trust" in some of the police cars.
Yeah. And that's probably as a result of Project Blitz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God,
this is why it's important when you're voting to go all the way down the ballot and every year.
Yeah. See who's running, see who they're affiliated with. And that's a lot of it they want to keep secret. That's like, for example, why what Jonathan Larson is doing is so important, because the prayer breakfast the family is a Dominionist organization. They're meeting with, prime ministers, presidents, businessmen, businesswomen, top leaders, military officials all over the world, trying to Christianize the world. And that's what they're doing. And the prayer breakfast is like, ostensibly, the president always speaks, and top officials, congressmen, congresswomen have spoken at this prayer breakfast. So it seems like it's a government sponsored event, but it's not, so they've done really well to like cloak it under the guise of it's a government event, but it isn't. It's all sponsored by the family.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot I was going to say a lot of state legislators will also have things that they'll do as far as like for the day of prayer and such as having people come in and talk and such. Yeah.
Well, there's just completely intertwined with the political sector, which is so strange. Like over here in the UK, I've been here coming up on 16 years. I mean, it's so different. We don't have any of that in this country. It's so strange to see that. I go back to America and it's just saturated with religion and politics. They're basically trying to knock down the wall of separation between church and state. And under Trump, they were able to do a lot of that. You know, we're seeing things like, I just read an article the other day. There's a case coming up for the Supreme Court in the state of Maine, and it's arguing that private Christian schools in rural areas should be state funded. So in other words, taxpayer dollars should go to fund small Christian schools where there may not be a public school in that area. So they're saying, well, you should send kids here because they're just physically too far from the public school. Send them to our Christian school. And if you're going to do that, we want taxpayer money to come to us, even though they're teaching an anti-LGBTQ, Islamophobic worldview. And that's about to head to the Supreme Court. So they're pushing that really, really hard right now.
Well, they've kind of done, like Betsy DeVos, she did the voucher program. So where they would get taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, they've been working on that a long time. Basically, it's an assault on public schools, and that goes back to Rushdoony, because he wrote articles and books on this back in even 1960s, where he talks about, he uses the term government schools, and so he won't say public schools. He'll say we need to shut down government schools. They're indoctrinating our children with this secular humanism. And we need the thing about Rushdoony that's so important is that he was a major sort of founder of many the Christian school and Christian homeschooling movement. So he was the first one to push this agenda back even in the 60s and then 70s and 80s. He went all over the country and he argued in court cases for the parental rights to homeschool, because that was all part of this Dominionist vision. So we see guys like, for example, Madison Cawthorn. He's a poster boy for the homeschooling movement. He was homeschooled. He went to Patrick Henry College for one semester. He got booted out for sexual harassment charges, but he's now a congressman. And he is a product of that entire Dominionist system. And a guy like Rushdoony would be saying that's exactly what this is all about. We need a guy like him to go through the system and then get into political power.
See, and it's not only bad for having these people, gaining the political power and having the politics be influenced by this, but it's also just harmful to the children. I was homeschooled. Yeah. I was raised, at home. It was like my whole life. I think I did 1 year of elementary public education and I got taken right back out. And I was completely unprepared for the world. Yeah. Once you get out there, it was, the only thing I knew that I had enough knowledge to do was to be a fucking pastor, and that was my plan for like most of my life. So and of course that didn't pan out, but
you're not a pastor now. I'm shocked.
I know, right? I got the look down, it's
yeah, right.
You just got to turn your chair backwards.
Right. Yeah, turn the chair.
You could have been the next Madison Cawthorn,
Right.
If you stayed in the system. That's why Patrick Henry College is such an important piece in the storyline, because that was expressly founded by a guy named Mike Ferris. I don't know if people have heard of Michael Ferris, but right now he's the head of the Alliance Defending Freedom. He's an attorney, which is the biggest Christian legal powerhouse in America. And he founded an organization called the Homeschool Legal Defense Association back in the early 1980s. And it was specifically set up to defend the right of homeschool parents to homeschool their children in their various states, because a lot of it was against the law back in the early 1980s. So he founded Patrick Henry College in 2004, and they're just outside of Washington, D.C. They're located in Virginia, and it's specifically set up for homeschool graduates to go get a degree and then to transition into the political and legal fields with a view towards this Dominionist agenda. So a guy like Madison Cawthorn would have been the poster child, because he did go on and get into politics. And unfortunately for him, he didn't graduate from Patrick Henry, but
Right.
That's just
But
the way it goes.
even not, look how much power he's gained.
Yep.
You know, even without, graduating. That's incredible.
And
they gotta throw the most awkward parties, right?
They have a tree bashing section where you can just beat up trees, for fun.
Patrick Henry.
Yeah, they just all hang out. They're like drinking their cola.
Yeah, it's a weird culture.
Homeschool kids, and they're like, "Hi."
Yep.
Sip. Okay.
Well, there's a really interesting book. It's by Hannah Rosen. It's called God's Harvard. And it's fast. If anyone wants to study what goes on at Patrick Henry College, she's actually Jewish, and she's a journalist. And she spent, I don't know, almost a year kind of embedded at Patrick Henry College. And they let her attend classes and talk to people, talk to professors, talk to students. And she wrote this book called God's Harvard. And it's a really good insight as to the sort of worldview behind why Patrick Henry was founded and how the day-to-day sort of running of the college is. It's a very strange. It's a bubble. Basically, they've created this little insulated bubble, mostly for homeschool kids to get a higher education degree.
Wow.
Do they have like different walking paths for men and women? Keep them all separate, like.
Well, they have but they have. It's very much in the purity culture mode, which works at that place because all these kids have come out of homeschooling, which was their sort of worldview, was the evangelical purity culture thing, which is why a guy like Madison Cawthorn, I think he ended up getting away with a lot of stuff because they tend to handle that kind of stuff in-house, so rather like the Josh Duggar thing, rather than calling the police, they said, well, we'll send him through counseling and therapy and we'll pronounce him restored, which is what they did for Josh Duggar. Now look at him. He just got arrested, or he was arraigned the other day, wasn't he? He's been sent to prison for child pornography, but he molested his sisters and some other, kids years ago. Rather than him going to jail, they handled it, in-house. They sent him to a Bill Gothard treatment center and pronounced that he was fine. Obviously, he's not fine. He's still downloading fucking child porn.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say this college also gives a perfect thing for a lot of parents, because there are a lot of kids who go to homeschool who then are like, okay, so I do want to, try and go to college, and parents go, hey, great, here's a perfect college, where they never ever have any of their learned information truly challenged. And it just keeps them in such a tight bubble with that they'll never look at somebody other and go, oh, hey, I can I can see what's going on here.
Different perspectives. Well, it's interesting because in the book God's Harvard, what happened was probably 4 or 5 years after Patrick Henry College was founded, a lot of the professors left. There was a big exodus, and the reason for that was exactly what you said, that they were pushing, they were just saying that's the spirit of academics. We have to look at things from multiple points of view. And they kept getting shut down by the administration because they were, trying to get the students to look at things from different perspectives. And they said, no, you can't do that. And they're like, what do you mean we can't? That's what academics is.
That's our job.
It's about, weighing up the strengths and weaknesses of any potential argument and position, critically thinking about stuff. And they ended up, a bunch of them just quit because they're like, this is a stifling atmosphere for academics. This isn't academics. You're training these kids into a system and not allowing them to experience other points of view.
Would that,
and that's the way it was.
I was gonna say, could you say that's possibly like almost like a continuation form of brainwashing?
Yeah, that's what I would say. It's a system. You're putting them into a system, a pipeline, and not allowing them to be exposed to other viewpoints and perspectives. So a bunch of professors were kind of forced out / quit right around the same time.
Wow. Well, hey, we only got you for a couple more minutes here. I did want to ask, what can we do? What can we do about this? Is there anything that the audience can do to, from where they're at, to try to help this not take place, to try to fight back?
Well, I think the biggest thing I would say is just educating yourself on the kind of the main players, the organizations that are doing different things. Like we talked about some of the big ones like Project Blitz, Council on National Policy, David Barton's Wall Builders. You go on these, you can just go on their websites and start reading about their information. There's also people that I've talked to that are experts on this. So One guy I would mention is Frederick Clarkson from the Political Research Associates. He was the one who blew the whistle on Project Blitz. Guys like Peter Montgomery from the Right Wing Watch. He writes a lot of articles on what the Christian right is doing. I obviously do I've done loads of episodes on my podcast talking to experts, people who know about Christian Reconstructionism, Dominion theology. And so there's a lot of resources there. Once you start to tap into what's going on, you start seeing the connections everywhere, and you can educate yourself and then say, okay, like you said, Hertz, I mean, who am I voting for? I need to find out who these candidates are affiliated with.
Can I add a resource? The American Atheists actually have like a whole thing, have done a huge amount of stuff about Project Blitz. And if you're ever curious about what's going on in your state, they have a resource about what laws are in, and they try to keep track of all that stuff. Every state should have legislative ways to find what legislative is being introduced. And there's a lot. So, I mean, like they can go through thousands of introduced things, and only a few of them will get passed. But going in and keeping an eye on those things is a good way.
Yeah. There's a couple other books I was thinking. Catherine Stewart, she's written a book called The Good News Club, which is really, really interesting. Talks about the Christian rights assault on public schools in America. Also, she wrote The Power Worshippers. She's done a ton of investigative journalism. So I would suggest those two books. You could read Julie Ingersoll, Building God's Kingdom, which is all about Christian Reconstructionism. That there's a ton of resources on what the Christian right is doing right now.
Wow, that's it. Yeah, that's really interesting. Like, it gives us kind of at least a starting point of where to know, where to go and how to fight back against it. Because like, if you don't know about what the bills are and stuff like that, you're not going to know what to vote for. So that's great that they have those resources there.
Oh yeah, and just keeping an eye on stuff like the Texas abortion law, knowing where that comes from, with perspective that they're pushing. It's a Christian nationalist agenda. That's what's behind the anti-abortion movement. And once you start making those connections, you can start to see what their agenda actually is.
Right. Yeah, that's freaky. Well, and we really appreciate you coming on. And helping to kind of guide the audience there and know how to fight back against this thing, because it's a big problem.
Yeah, it is. It's all pervasive. It really is, right across the spectrum in America. Certainly in America, but it's worldwide as well. Like I say, organizations like the Family, they're doing stuff all over the world. One of the things that Jonathan Larson's blowing the whistle on is their involvement in Ukraine. So they're starting prayer breakfast in Ukraine, which is a big anti-LGBTQ thing going on over there. So it's not just an American thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's even scarier. That's great.
Thanks for that.
Right. But okay. So is there any do you have any pluggables, like where we can find your work there?
I mean, just look up the Mindshift podcast. There's actually a couple of Mindshift podcasts, but if you look up my name, you can follow me on Twitter at Mindshift 2018. There's also a public Facebook page, Mindshift Podcast Facebook page. So, and I'm on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all those major podcast platforms as well.
Awesome. And, one last thing before you go, of course, we have to have you say, hi, I'm Clint Haycock, and you took a left at the Valley.
All right. I'm Dr. Clint Haycock, and you took a left at the Valley.
Oh, I'm sorry. I took a left at the Valley.
I took a left at the Valley.
I was saying you.
Someone took a left at the Valley. It may have been me. I'm not sure.
We're all taking a left turn now.
We're all taking a left, a hard left, I think.
Hey, that's all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Really enjoyed it. I'm going to go talk to Jonathan Larson in a minute, so I'm excited about that.
Yay, that's so cool.
Yeah. It will be available on my public Facebook page in a couple of weeks if people want to see that conversation with Jonathan. So look for that as well.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. That's
very
really cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. And
we'll do this. We'll definitely do this again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You're part of the family now, so we got to have you come back, man. That's how we do.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in another time, maybe next year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to have to be at this point. I mean,
it's going to have to be.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. I'll see you guys later then.
All right. Take it easy, man.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
And that was the good Dr. Clint with us. That was a fun interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though we weren't there.
You guys control it. I'm really, really proud of you. Now we should do a poll. Do you think Brent and Benjamin and Hersey should just replace me on the show? Tell us now.
We'll do a Twitter vote. There we go. We'll do that. On
Yes. Yeah, we'll set up a Twitter poll.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the Twitter
poll. Yeah.
We're tired of it, guys.
Yeah.
Enough of this shit. We're tired of this. So what did you guys think about this entire thing about Christian dominionism? I think it's a subject that people don't take seriously. But, what I keep telling what I call apatheists, like the atheists that have too much apathy, because they always say politically, oh, well, it doesn't matter. We have the truth on our side. Yeah, but in a political battle, and this is a political battle, that doesn't mean squat.
Right.
No, truth means nothing. And that's the scariest thing about this, I think.
Yeah.
The fact with Trump, I think Trump pretty much proved that truth does not matter. It's what you can repeat enough and have it be black and white enough and basic enough for people to just take it in a sound bite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And these Christians never, ever, ever give up. They never give up. No matter how many times you prove to them the point, no matter how many times you say, you know what, you're wrong, we're right. Here's the proof. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. As long as they can get their way, that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
I've made the comparison before, but it's a bit like going to a sports game. You don't care if your football team tricked the umpire and cheated, as long as you got the point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to call out the other team, that's for sure, right?
Yeah.
He totally. But when it's your team, don't say anything. And this is how you see it in politics, and this is how Christians see it as well. For them, they think they're on a holy mission anyway. They actually do think their argument is to control the world. And
yeah.
It's also a very emotional argument. For them, it's all basing on a lot of that, how they feel.
Yeah,
right.
And that is a very, very hard thing to battle, because you can't battle feelings with logic.
No, and it's because I was actually just listening to a thing about this in psychology. They're saying that beliefs are, it was Shermer. It was the conspiracies and conspiracy theories. It's a lecture series he's doing. Anyway, he was saying beliefs or emotions are it's like snap to go from emotions to beliefs, right? And it's something your brain wants to do. Logic and reason, that takes effort and everything for your mind. And so your brain, it's not natural. It's unnatural. But going from emotions to beliefs, that is very natural. And that's what Fox News plays with.
Oh, yeah. And when you understand that, you understand a lot of the psychology of any everyday thing. This feels creepy, therefore it must be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that says it's dangerous, but because it feels like that to you, you automatically feel, your gut instinct, like they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great job, guys. Good job on that interview, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh, thanks. No problem. Anytime.
Pick up where I dropped the ball.
It happens. It happens.
Thank you so much to Dr. Clint Haycock. I didn't say that right. Haycock. Haycock for being our guest. Thank you to Sabrina, Brett, Lee, Hersey, and Benjamin for being my co-hosts. Well, thank you for taking over while I couldn't. And thank you for listening. You can follow us at leftatvalley.ca. Don't go to .com. Send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can go to Patreon and go to patreon.com/LATV. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/leftatvalley. Perfect. At Twitter at LATV Podcast. What am I missing?
On Instagram at, I don't know, Left at the Valley somewhere.
Something like that. The YouTube channel as well.
YouTube is youtube.com/Left at the Valley.
Give us a 5-star review. Your fans. It helps us and helps others find the show. Brent, Unapologetics, give us a quick plug.
Hey, yeah, come check out Unapologetics panel stream on YouTube. That's Unapologetics spelled with an X. It's a lot of fun. We're just hanging out. We're watching videos. We goof off. It's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Coming up, we'll be talking to our last show of the year, Tom and Cecil of Cognitive Dissonance. It should be fun. It should be one not to miss, for sure.
Exactly.
And after that, we're taking a little Christmas hiatus. Get
Small trip.
Some chance to
vacation,
relax,
family
a
time with
little
you
bit,
guys
exactly.
for Christmas or whatever you celebrate. If you
I'm
don't
actually going
celebrate.
back east, going back home, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And they have no idea.
Big airplane ride for
Got a
Sabrina.
surprise.
Sabrina's never been in an airplane for this long, so a little bit stressed, just slightly.
Coming up in January, we'll be talking to Professor Edward Hodge, and we'll be talking about the natural person movement. That'll be interesting. We'll be talking to Tracy Harris and Jen Belk about their new show. Remember Tracy Harris?
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And we'll also be talking to our friend Bernard Laborel about his new book as well. And we got plenty more coming up down our sleeve.
Yeah. Whole new season. We're going to call it season 2 of Left at the Valley because it's going to be our second season.
Are we starting
Damn, that's awesome.
Of course we are. It's a new year.
You should start the season in March, by the way.
Too bad.
That's for daytime television.
I'm the accountant. I get to change the fiscal year end.
Ooh.
Calendar year, baby.
That is the power of accounting.
Exactly.
Right.
Let me take a sec on me. It sounds so hateful, but I swear to God, unintended, I find it disgraceful.
I'll be right back.